Texas has the power to reject Confederate flag license plates. That's according to the U.S. Supreme Court. This week, the High Court ruled a license plate is government speech. That means the First Amendment does not prohibit the state from rejecting some designs. This all stems from a lawsuit from the Sons of Confederate Veterans, which had challenged the state's rejection of its license plate. The controversy over the Confederate flag license plate is our topic this hour. We want to hear from you on Facebook and on Twitter. Joining us live in the newsroom is our Fox 26 senior legal analyst, Chris Tritico, Fox 26 news analyst, Mustafa Tamiz, and public policy analyst, Jackie Bally. Hey, Chris, you made it.
Well, you know, I didn't, 6 a.m. I thought it was 6 p.m.
Thank you for joining us.
You're hilarious. All right, guys, what are your thoughts on this one?
You know, when this story first broke a year or so ago and we started talking about it, I took the position that once the state allowed us to dictate the content that we wanted on our license plates, that they gave up their claim that this was the state's speech and not public speech. It was state speech. I was wrong. Wow, that happens. Who knew? You know, I really think that once you gave that up, that the state gave up its claim to say we can dictate what we're going to have on this license plate. Not to say that I appreciate what's being put on license plates, and I'm actually happy that the state is controlling that, because it can get out of hand, Jackie Bally. You know, the state says this is our license plate. We can control the content. At the same time saying you can tell us what you want on there.
Yeah, I was a little surprised with this ruling as well, but the Confederate flag in particular, that's what we're discussing. And what the flag meant in the 50s compared to what it symbolizes today, especially with so much racial tension, there's a difference. In the 50s, it had more cultural or historical significance. But unfortunately now you have a larger group. When you see a flag, a lot of African Americans, they see that as a reminder of strife, of slavery. And again, with so many riots that we're seeing going on and a lot of tension that we see going on, that's why you're seeing more of a change and consideration of those communities and of those groups.
But why should the state of Texas say you can express yourself on your license plate all the way up until we decide you can't?
Well, I think that the Supreme Court made a really good argument. It said that on the one hand, the state can't tell you about what kind of speech you should have. At the same time, you can't tell the state what kind of speech it should have. So they said basically that, you know, you can put a bumper sticker right next to that license plate and say whatever you want. But if you want it on the license plate itself, then you're trying to govern the speech of the state. And that in itself is the precedent that they formed, that both sides have freedom of speech and the state has the right to say that they shouldn't have a Confederate flag. The other thing that was interesting was Justice Clarence Thomas was on the side of this argument, which I thought was very telling, because he's been very conservative, very consistently on many things.
On everything.
On everything.
But he's still a black man.
This is the first time that he broke out on the side, and I thought that was very good. I think, and especially in the context of what's happening right now with the shooting.
I'm going to go to Donnelly. She's monitoring our social media.
That's right. Meat and Patatas says the Confederate flag wasn't raised over the South Carolina Capitol until 1962 in defiance of the Civil Rights Movement. And then at Ellison 1946 says it's not just Confederate flag. Education system, especially in South Carolina, in the South rather, is deplorable. Given Dylan's rantings, who knew nothing about history, disgrace. Any comments on those two messages?
That kind of melded a lot of things into one argument there. You know, the fact that the battle flag has taken on a segregationist mentality is really, I think, the issue in the South and why people so object to it so much. And the funny thing is, it's the battle flag. It's not the Confederate flag. It's the battle flag. But airing that flag is not the same thing as educating the people about why segregation and why racial discrimination is so bad.
Yeah, I mentioned this before. I went to Robert E. Lee in high school, and our flag was the Confederate flag, and I was a flag person. So I was literally a black girl twirling the Confederate flag.
We got to get a picture of this.
Oh, well, no, that's okay. But the point is, the school administrators at the time, you know, this was unfortunately, I'm not as young as I look, but this was a lot of years ago, and the school administrators felt that that was a true part of their heritage.
Of the South.
Of the South.
Right.
And so even though a black person like me would find that offensive, it was still the flag of the school. I think we've seen these discussions with the chiefs. We've seen this, we had a segment about the name of Indian chiefs and the name of Indians. You're seeing a lot of the more diverse we become, the more we are looking at things like this and saying this is no longer acceptable.
You know, I thought the comments that Lindsey Graham made were a little bit over the top. It's a very difficult.
Lindsey Graham over the top? Really?
Well, look,
I like Lindsey Graham.
At this point, you know, people defending the right to fly a Confederate flag over a state capitol, that time has passed. And if you're in the mainstream politics today, you need to get off of that. And I think we just have to be less tolerant of that now for people to keep asserting that that is some kind of an inalienable right to fly the flag that you want to fly. We live in the United States of America, and we have to come together on issues like race.
And the South lost. I mean, it's a fact.
Well, won or lost, I mean, it's part of the union, and we can't keep pretending that, you know, our state of Texas is going to secede, or the South is its own culture and it's not part of the United States. Either you are or you aren't, and we decided long ago that we are.
What about that? Is that a political liability for Lindsey Graham or other people who would defend flying this battle flag, knowing the problems that it causes with the African American community?
I think, well, first of all, the African American community is not his base. And the people who would vote for him and his base are people who actually identify with the flag, the Confederate flag, because of Southern history, the history and the culture. Now, not all people who actually embrace the Confederate flag are racist. Unfortunately, though, because race relations are at an all-time low, well, a negative low.
Yeah.
It's very negative.
Right.
Because of that, the Confederate flag does bring up a lot of emotions, a lot of negative emotions, and that's why we're having this discussion.
Real quick.
Look, I think regardless of whether they're his base or not, if you're running for the presidency of the United States and you don't want to look like Donald Trump, then you have to be a serious person.